So I'm pretty impressed. Like my feeling is that you don't need so much of so many resources, yeah. And especially compared to Big Blue Button, where you need like 8 cores and so on. Of course, it has a few features that are additional, but like it seems to be relatively lightweight compared to other solutions. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been struggling with the Blue Button. Honestly, that was a bit tricky. So I just shared my screen. Just turn on my camera as well. So this is the layout that I have. It's nothing fancy. I mean, honestly, it's nothing fancy. It is just you know, I have a Nook that is my base OS. That's around 8.2 with the 16 gig of RAM on that, and then the Jitsi is in a Debian 10, I think it is, VM, and I allocated 8 gig of RAM for the VM, and that's basically it. I mean, this is the entire diagram that I have. Nothing fancy. So if you want the VM, I'm happy to ship you the VM because it's already ready to go. You just have to change the IP number and maybe the usernames and all that, and then off you go.
Nice. So did anyone else here in this call set up Jitsi? Any experience here? Anyone?
I do know that there's a lot of others in Singapore who have Jitsi servers running at their data center, though. There was a group of people I was speaking with yesterday, and they are running a Jitsi server. They have added a Sudoku player to it, so you can play the Sudoku game and a Jitsi, but they are targeting this for senior citizens so that they have something to do, so that they can also play the game and talk to somebody on a video. So that's the intent behind that, and it works quite well. I must say I was fairly impressed with it, how easily it worked. So Daryl, you can see when I share my screen, you can see the screen that I'm sharing, and you can also see my video. So when you share whatever you want to share, you can also then turn on your camera. When you share it the first time, your camera gets turned off. Then you just turn your camera back on. Then it appears on the bottom of the screen. All right, so I'll stop sharing now. And by the way, multiple people can share as well, so you can concurrently share. So I don't have to give up to allow somebody else to share. So that's I don't know if anybody else doing the same, giving that same functionality.
Yeah, well, that was a problem with Big Blue Button, and they also have a few issues open. They said they don't want to change that, but for example, we did a few workshops where everyone wants to share their terminal, and so we can see what is the progress. Yeah, and this is really nice at Jitsi because you can do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially in a classroom situation, if you have a classroom and you want all the kids to show stuff, and everybody shows at the same time instead of one person waiting for the other to hand over, everybody shows it, and then put your videos there as well, so that it's kind of nice.
Okay, maybe I can share because I'm actually logged into the backend, the server, so I can see some stats. Right now, I think we have 17 users. I know, but quite a lot of you didn't turn on the screen, so I think about 5-6 people switching on the screen. So maybe where's the share? Oh, here.
No, yeah,
this one. Okay, so maybe I can share. Where is it? So it's actually here. Chrome tab. Yeah, this one. Hang on, can you all see?
Yeah.
Yeah, so CPU is actually very low. So it's like 10+% on the server. Memory, about 4 gig memory. And then I'll say more on the network. Network is probably about, I would say max at 5 megabit per second. So just set So I think we can still handle more people.
Yeah, so imagine we have a laptop running the HD camera. My laptop is going to present my slides. I have my phone monitoring YouTube and another machine there to run OBS to do the broadcasting from Jitsi to YouTube. So it's quite a fair bit of setup.
Yeah, right now I'm using 4 core, 4 CPU. Okay, I'm allocating quite a lot, like 16 gig RAM, but it doesn't even break a sweat.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so shall we start?
Oh, so I start mine?
Oh no, we start with
okay. Harish.
Harish first.
Okay.
So Harish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have to find you the top. I got so many screens. Hello. How do we make him full screen?
No, he need to talk then.
He needs to talk, then he'll be full screen.
Yeah, you'll switch the
So I think we are all very interested to learn of your journey and your experience during the last general election. So actually, what made you decided to take part in the general election?
That's not the question I think I should be answering. It has got to do with what is it that I can do to make a difference.
That was going to be the next one. Why don't you
the only way you can
together?
The only way you can make a difference is to participate. The challenge we have here is that until and unless you participate, you have no idea what it is that is possible, and also what are the actual concerns on the ground. There's a lot of, I'm hearing a hissing sound. Where is it? Me?
No.
Okay, it's gone. So there were many things that happened over the last 10, 12 years, which really got me very disappointed and frustrated that there wasn't enough of an intellectual level of engagement to solve problems. It was very everybody complain, and nothing happens. And it is always I know better, you just follow me and then be done with it. And I frankly, enough is enough. After a point of time, I said, this is not going anywhere. And when Cheng Bok approached me last year, because when he started the party, he asked me to consider joining. I said, I'm not going to bother with joining a political party because, they are by definition have this one flaw. And the flaw is, in the cases in Singapore, is the notion of a party whip. If you don't know what a party whip is, the party whip is meant to be the person who forces the issue in a particular direction. And let's say you're in parliament and something has to be voted on, and the party says you must vote yes or you must vote no or whatever, and the whip is the one that enforces it. And that's a very simple example of it. And I think that is fundamentally wrong because the example that I would give will be, you are supposed to be representing people on the ground, your constituents and so on. These are the people who apparently voted for you. And if there's something that comes up and you have a conversation with them and they say, hey, look, this is we agree with this or we disagree with this or whatever it is, right? And then you come back with a certain stand, and then it turns out the party's stand is opposite to that. But you're forced to go with the party, not with what the people say. That, to me, is being very dishonest because you are not listening to the ground at all. Because at that point, you're saying, I'm sorry, I got to go with the party because the party says I have to vote against you. Then what the heck am I doing there as a member of parliament representing the people? I think that is fundamentally the wrong thing to do. So you should be able to go with what the constituents require and ask for. So that's my. I mean, certainly I may have a different opinion from the constituents, and then you have to reach a compromise, and then you have a adult conversation to figure out what's the right thing to do. So that's how that whole notion I felt was wrong to force it. So when I told Cheng Bok that I can't consider joining it because it's a political party in the Singapore context and I don't like that, And within minutes, he turned around and said, "Don't worry about it. We are not having a party whip." There's a reason for that as well, because he himself got pushed back when he was previously with the PAP. He got pushed back because he voted against what the party wanted. The two of the things, among many other things as well, was the creation of the NCMP and the NMP schemes. He voted against it because he said this is the wrong thing to do. He shouldn't do that. But the party wanted it, so he therefore was, went against the party whip. But because for whatever reason he never got pushed aside or anything like that, and so he has held his ground, and he knows what that means, and so he appreciated that perspective. And I was glad that he said, okay, when he said that, that's what, don't worry about it. We're not going to have any of these kinds of stuff because it makes no sense. You must do something because you think you want to make this happen. So I had one less reason to say no to him. And, as a result, I said, yeah, sure, why not? Let's see what we can do. And so the process started. I only joined in January this year. So, I had to go and, talk to family and everybody and say, hey, this is potentially a scenario. What does that mean? And are they okay with it? All right. So, we went ahead with it. But I must say that the entire experience has been very humbling in many, many ways. Because you get to go out to the my constituency that I was assigned to was initially West Coast because that's where I live, but I got moved to Tanjung Pagar because they needed additional people there. So I moved to Tanjung Pagar, and the area in Tanjung Pagar that I covered was in the northern part of Tanjung Pagar, which goes from Farrer Road eastwards all the way to Serangoon Road, the Tekka area, that whole segment there, which is like about 33 HDB blocks and about 1,000 condos and God knows how many other huge landed property areas, which is enormous. First time I'm seeing some of the. Honestly, I've never been to some of these places, which is like, wow, this is still Singapore, but that's okay. So that was my area. So I had opportunity to go and meet with people there, and I must say that it is both very humbling and very invigorating, because it's like, there are real issues, there are real people, and they are more than happy to have a conversation with someone who they feel they can connect and they feel is bringing credibility to the equation. It's not a fly-by-night operation or just trying to get a vote and do something. No, trying to make a difference, because I think together we can make a difference. So that was the conversation I had. To be although in the end we didn't win, but that's okay. My area, that segment, that's called Moulmein Cane Hill area, I received because the way the counting, you can actually figure out a certain group of blocks or properties and all that, how that group voted. So in my group, I had altogether about 46%. So I lost only by 4%. Whereas my other teammates in the other groups, they had lesser and some higher. And so on the average, we came up to about 38%, which is, think about it, that's for a first timer, for a party that is brand new. And as I tweeted at the end, I said, for a 1-year-old startup, since it's a startup, on demo day, we had 40% of market share from an incumbent. Okay. So now, next thing, what do you want to do? So there are things that we want to do, move forward. It's not a fly-by-night operation. It's going to be a consistent thing, because I think we can make a difference, because a lot of things that are still not being done. Even though this is Singapore, but there's still a lot of things not being done in the way I think it can be done. And there's a lot of people, others as well. There's issues of transparency and accountability that is still an issue. But let's see. I mean, now that we have given them a kick in the butt, as it were, let's see what happens. I'm actually quite enthusiastic about it, because it's kind of you feel good that you did something and people responded to you, and I think that was the positive thing from my perspective. Now, of course, there were people who were absolutely negative, and I'll give you one instance of I was at the Tiong Bahru market. I'm not sure whether you know where that is. Which is kind of funny. It was I think it was a Saturday morning, and we were 8 or 9 o'clock or so. So we're walking down the place, and I was at one table where somebody's eating something, and I introduced myself. So I'm wearing the T-shirt. I said I'm so and so, and I was done. And I was going to the next table, and at the next table, there was a couple. A lady was facing me, and the gentleman was his back to me. So I'm going past the one that I just spoke with and towards the next table. So as I just started moving, the lady saw me, and immediately she put her arms like that, right across her, you know. It says no. I mean, don't talk to me. So I looked at it and said, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then as I went past the gentleman there, he also, you know, just put his hand up next to me and said, you know, like, don't talk to me. That's fine. But that reaction to me was like, well, what the heck is this? This is, unfortunately, nobody took a picture of it, so I don't have the proof. But those who were around, they all saw this, like, why does that person react that way? You know, no idea. But that was an interesting bit of, and there were many other stories I can tell, but I'll stop here. I'm hearing a bus. Where's the bus coming from? Is it Zach, yours, or me? Okay, it's gone.
I don't hear anything.
I hear it.
No.
I can hear the bus.
I'm hearing it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some.
Okay, I mute.
So what you can do is you can, I think, somehow mute everyone else, and then Harish can just switch on. I don't know, where was that button?
I just muted myself, and okay, I'm now unmuted. So
Yeah,
okay.
me too. Anyone else has
Okay.
any questions for Harish?
Don't worry, nothing is recorded.
Actually, we are actually live streaming to YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, then just send me an anonymous question. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the party whip system itself, I think it's like it's a remnant from the British colonial days, right? So I guess it's the optional thing. I'm not too sure why. I mean, it's like the ruling parties keep on assigning people to be the party whip and things like that. So it's like they are stuck in the colonial days whereby they need to have the whip to enforce discipline, right? That's the idea of the whip, right? To enforce the discipline.
Yeah, the idea. Yeah, well, not so much discipline per se, but I mean, you can call it discipline. But the intention is to, you know, stay the party line, you know, or else, you know, that kind of stuff, like a discipline master. But the thing is, you know, you don't need it, right? I mean, how am I? And I give you another example as well. And this is, you know, I know how the outcome was going to be, so I was not surprised. So when the POFMA bill was proposed, you know, I felt this is fundamentally wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. Okay, the wrong law to be introduced. But I know it's going to be passed anyway, right? No matter what anybody says. So what I felt important is I should then reach out to my MPs, okay, to tell them I'm not happy with it. Let's have a conversation. What's your point of view? Blah blah blah. So I happen to be in West Coast, and there were four persons in my area, and two of them are ministers, and the other two were not. So I sent email directly to all four of them at the same time, saying, you know, I'm a resident of this place. I would like to have a conversation with you about and I look forward to hearing from you. I think this is the wrong law to be enacted, and I think it's going to be negatively impacting Singapore in many, many ways. And there was no reply, not even a thank you email. I must qualify. There was one reply, which was a stock reply from one of the others, not the minister individuals, one of the other two, whose reply said, "Oh, the MP session is on this day at this time. Come there." I mean, it's a standard reply. So, but that's not the way you do this. So there is no conversation, there is no engagement. Let's not talk about it. That's not how you have accountability. Absolutely not accountable. I mean, I told them, if I don't get anything from you within the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I'll put the entire thing on my blog. I haven't done that yet, but I'll do that. And that's something to say. You could not be bothered to reply, because that's how the system works, because they cannot possibly vote otherwise. So that for me is fundamentally the wrong thing to do. How can you encourage diversity of opinion and a debate in a manner that will benefit everybody by saying no, we don't discuss this? So I'm sorry, you lose me at that point.
Kang has a question. Is there any candidate that you admire?
Admire? That's a tough question. How do I answer that question? Admire? No, I mean, maybe not. Maybe what you meant was something
Maybe
else,
your party Chingbok?
no.
I don't know. My daughter was super thrilled with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a warmth about him, and there is a sense of because I did ask him, like, why the heck are you doing this? You're 80 years old. And he's the same age as my mom, right? So like, why are you doing this? You already retired from the PAP, and now you're running against this and so on. And his perspective is he felt something is not going right. So if you have a person who came from the ruling party, and after retiring, a few years later, he feels, hey, something not right. Something needs to be fixed. Something has to be done. And for him then to step up to it and start something all over again, and that's not easy. I mean, so I looked at it from that perspective. So that was inspirational from my perspective, because I say, if somebody is really frustrated, and we all know the frustration, right? Why can't we do it differently? So he felt he is gone the wrong way, and so that's why he stood up. So yeah, so in that sense, I kind of like what he did, and that was a sense of inspiration as well. But I think the bigger picture is that there was enough people who stood up this time around to give a sense of credibility to the entire process. To say, hey, look, we are not fly-by-night operations. I mean, there was a person who, at one of the places I was walking around, this person came up to say, "Oh, you guys are just what is the term he used? Mosquito parties." So I said, "What do you mean by mosquito party? Oh, you come show up and then we just slap you away and then you're dead and you're gone." So I said, no. This is not a mosquito party. It's not going to go away just like that. You can't just spray the mosquito repellent and off we go. No, that's not how it works. But yeah, we are in this for the long term. That's for sure.
So we have a tech question. Okay, we have to come back to a tech team. So this from Houfu. Do you get to contribute any tech expertise to the party?
Yes, I have been asked to head up all things tech for the party per se in the first instance, but more importantly to see what else we can do for the ground, for the people on the ground as well. So yes, the answer is yes, and I'm looking for all kinds of help and support from whoever wants to support. Membership is not a prerequisite. It's just it's just like any other open source community. I mean, I treat it as an open source community more than anything else. There are HDB blocks. There's this one HDB block which comes under my area, which is a one-room flat. Which is when you look at it, I don't know how many of you had a chance to walk through some of the HDB one-room flats. It's actually quite I don't want to use the word depressing, but it's not depressing. It's just it's an unfortunate scenario that they are in. We can do better than that. So internet access so while we were doing this, right? So there were kids there. It's a one-room flat, They have kids, there are 2 or 3 kids, and they have to do their schoolwork. They have to use a laptop, and they are struggling, not enough space. And some of them no laptop, and so they are sharing. That's exactly one laptop, and they have the parents, if they have a handphone and doing something on a handphone. That's not how you do online learning from a school point of view. So we have to do better. Fundamentally, we failed at that point. I think as a country, we failed at that point. How come this is happening? I mean, yeah, everything came as a shock to everybody. Totally agree. But we need to step out from a tech perspective. Let's see how we can solve this problem. So there are some ground-up initiatives on getting Wi-Fi to HDB homes, especially the rentals and the one-room flats. I mean, this is Singapore still. How is it that we still have to worry about these things?
Okay, well, let us know.
Yeah,
We're always happy to help. Anyone?
Yeah, the home-based learning I find is quite a challenge even for myself. I have a lot of devices at home, but then it's like imagine if like 3 classes goes on at the same time, it's gonna be very noisy in the house. And if you use a tablet, you cannot type anything. You cannot use a finger to do all these browser stuff, because some of the applications that in the browser is really quite rigid, and it's tough to use. I mean, even for me, I've Mac, I have PCs, I have tablets at home, all the devices at home. I even run into all these issues, even for myself. I mean, for the one-room family itself, I think it's going to be a huge challenge itself. Yeah.
No, it is. It is actually a real, because in fact, I would connect you. I would suggest that you watch a recording that was done, a webinar that was done by the Internet Society maybe 3 weeks ago, or maybe last month, I think. No, whenever it was, I think earlier this month.
Yeah, correct.
And it was about the digital divide in Singapore during the COVID-19. And these were 3 researchers from the NUS and NTU who looked at the issues and SUTD issues at stake. And one of the things that they were analyzing is looking at the data that is provided, from INDA, from official terms, saying that we have X percentage or almost 100% coverage of devices in the homes. Okay, what does that actually mean? It does not. It doesn't break down into laptops and desktops and mobile phones and tablets. It doesn't break down like that. You cannot do homework on a mobile phone. It's not going to work. You cannot do e-learning on mobile phone from a kid's perspective. It's the wrong device. So you need a proper keyboard. You need something like that in order to get something out of it. And so their research threw up that as a significant shortcoming that they are trying to address. They got some donations, I believe, from NUS computer students, computer science students, of laptops and stuff like that, which is a good thing. So there is effort that we need to put into place, both from a PSP point of view and the Singapore open source community.
Yeah, I think I totally concur with Harish that it's. I was quite surprised. I mean, there were, I think it was 2 FOSS Asia ago, somebody went to a workshop and asked, "Can you run Python from a mobile phone?" I said, "Why would you want to do that?" It was quite a. I stopped short of asking him that. I suppose he had his reasons.
Yeah. I mean, the thing we have to keep in mind is that there is we need to have granularity in the numbers, the research numbers that official collections are, that does from a statistics point of view in terms of internet-enabled devices. I'm assuming internet-enabled devices doesn't include your TV. Okay, but I think things like your tablet, your mobile phone, and your laptop is probably included as one lump sum. But that is not good from a teaching perspective. So if from a student perspective, we need to slice it out and see, okay, how many are there and how does that help? Because if it's all you have is in fact, I just remember in one of the one-room flats, I remember the corner house, there's a grandfather, the grandmother, and 3 kids in that house. The grandfather was outside, I mean, it's one-room flat, on his mobile phone. He was, I don't know, watching something. And the kid, one of the kids was sitting next to him and doing her homework on that one, or on another mobile phone, maybe her grandmother's mobile phone. I mean, come on, that's just not acceptable. I mean, that was really, for me, was not acceptable. So I mean, I've gone back there to sort out the thing, but when I saw it, it's like, goodness, this is like the first week of July. I think maybe July 4th or 5th or something like that, whenever it was. So it was just, to me, that was very, your heart sinks at that point. It's like, wrong. This is the wrong thing to do. Anyway.
Yes, I totally concur with that as well, because I think some of you know that I teach Python, and one of the students in my class was, I think, 10 years old. And I asked her, for a 10-year-old, you have pretty thick glasses. I said, "What's your degree?" And I found out that her degree was about 280, nearly 300, which is about the same as mine. Now, I'm 54 years old. She's about 10. Right? What's more is I know somebody else who's about 15 years younger than I, and he has spectacles like 800 over. And if he puts his spectacles aside, really he cannot move around the room already. He's just that handicapped. And the reason they are that bad is because they do so many things on their mobile phone. They read books from e-books from their mobile phone on this tiny little screen. Right? Now, I used to do learning products when I was working in R&D, and I had to review manuals, big, huge manuals, but I was using my computer screen for that. So that was not so bad. Even then, it took some getting used to. And having said all that, what about all our youngsters who are reading books and watching movie on their tiny little mobile phone? I mean, what's going to happen to their eyesight? By the time they are in their mid-30s, they won't be able to see anything without their spectacles already. Okay, so that's the challenge we have ahead.
Okay, maybe we have SCANTIST actually waiting to speak soon. Well, any last question for Harish? Well, we can, you know how to reach Harish, so any last question? So, Harish, what's your plan between now till the next election? Any?
Oh, you're going to be hitting the... Oh, yeah, there are plenty of things to do.
Okay.
First thing to do is to... we kind of like reorganized in the last 4 weeks. Reorganized in terms, because now that we have 2 persons in parliament. So those 2 individuals have nothing other than to worry about from a parliament point of view. So that so Manwai and Hazel, they were part of the West Coast GRC, so they're not touching this. They just focus on that stuff. So the next few things you want to do is to get on the ground activities, events, reach out to the people to see what we can do to help. In fact, right, I am still getting requests from people because I put out my Twitter and my LinkedIn. I am not going to use Facebook. Okay, that's completely out of whack. Although the party uses that, but I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to respond on that. Zero. But even though that the 2 platforms that I have, people have reached out and they are asking for this and that, and I connect them with whoever I can direct them to. My first request to all of them is, please approach your elected MP first. I'm not your elected MP. You go and ask them first. And then if that fails, then you come back to me. Then let me see what I can do. Because that's their responsibility. That's what they're supposed to be doing, not me. I can't do something. I can help where I can, but the things which I can't do. So it's better for them to do that kind of stuff. So the plan is we are going to do a lot more stuff on the ground, subject to all the constraints that we have to work within. So it'll be what you're calling a virtual branch offices. That's the term that we're using. The virtual branch offices for each of the GRCs and the other constituencies that we have participated. So now we're staying in the grounds that we are, that we took part, all 24 of us.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot for sharing with us tonight. Hopefully we'll...
And call your volunteers if you need me.
Yeah, let us know if we can be of any help. So next we have someone from SCANTIST.
Yep.
Who's that?
Rohan.
You want to introduce
Rohan? So Rohan, if you are online, you can share your screen if you have a slide or a quick demo or anything. And also have a quick introduction of SCANTIST, which I bumped into quite a while ago at one of the startup and a security event and stuff. Yeah,
great. Okay, Zach, Daryl, thanks a lot. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't tell if the mute button on this is muted or not. It doesn't say. But anyways, all right. Okay, thanks, guys. I did, again, we got to know of FOSSG thanks to Zach and Daryl, and we've been trying to make something happen. I think today is our day. Thanks a lot again for letting us speak. For those of you who may not be aware, which I think would be most of you, we are a cybersecurity startup out of NTU. So we've been around for a few years now, and we're focusing on the application security solutioning. And so we build products. We're not a services or a pen testing outfit. We are more on the product side when it comes to cybersecurity solutions. One of our key focuses is open source security, and this is software composition analysis for those of you who know. So I'll just share a little bit of that, but effectively what I'm going to focus more importantly, since I believe most of us are aware of the risk, etc. I want to focus more on what we are doing to mitigate those risks and make lives a little bit easier for those who use open source in the development process. Yeah, so I think I know we didn't have a title for this talk, Zach, I'm sorry, couldn't get it out to you, but effectively we're gonna talk about dependency hell and making it a little less hellish during the development lifecycle. So again, all of us are aware of open source use. I think open source libraries in particular when it comes to developing software, that's what supports the digital transformation in a lot of ways. But I think some of us may not be aware of the fact that some of the, it is increasingly a cause of concern when it comes to security on the application layer. So 1 in 4 data breaches is exploiting open source components when it comes to web apps or mobile apps. This is up from 1 in 7 5 years ago. Some of the largest corporate breaches, like the one at Equifax, was again an open source exploit. And then obviously all of this is on an exponential curve. As open source explodes, so does the vulnerabilities and security risks with it. That said, open source is great. There's nothing inherently insecure about open source. It's just that just like any other software, it needs to be secured and you need to follow your best practices to make sure that you stay secure. So with that, for those of you not aware, there's a suite of products which is software composition analysis. And at SCANTIST, we have developed one of these, and effectively it is meant to enable software developers to use open source libraries effectively without having to worry about the legal and security risks constraints. Those of you who use GitHub, for example, you would be aware of GitHub security advisories that show up from time to time telling you of a vulnerable dependency. So think of this as something which does that and then a lot more on top of that. And effectively, the goal is fast-track development, low-cost development, and to do that in a way that is secure and risk-free. So also, as organizations transition to DevSecOps, you want to build this into the development lifecycle as a check. So for those of you who are aware, Equifax, it's a classic example of the Apache Struts 2 framework being exploited to carry out a leakage of about 150 million credit ratings in the US. And effectively, there's a whole Senate hearing that follows up, and in that, they get slapped for $700 million in settlement. The core reason being the questions like what open source dependencies you're using, are they vulnerable, what are your processes to manage those, were all missing when it came to Equifax, and that's why they got slapped such a high penalty. This was 2017 though. Since then, things seem to have changed, but even here at home, when we looked at the Apex platform, which was at the Singapore FinTech Festival last year, we found that the use of vulnerable dependencies in the application development space continues to happen. So in this case, this was a sample bank, a digital bank that they said was put together in 10 days. And effectively, this is the cost you pay when you build something in 10 days. Their idea was to prove the speed of fintech and the capabilities and possibilities, but effectively, when we analyzed it, the repositories were online and this is what you would get. So we pushed it back to them and they said, yes, we have a process and we'll deal with it, but effectively wasn't the most encouraging of responses. And then when we work with one of our customers, obviously this is something that is a little more scary because it's an actual bank. You have very similar issues that pop up. Now the thing about vulnerable dependencies for those of you who code is fixing them is rather straightforward, right? All you need to do is patch your components and libraries to a newer version, and most times that should suffice. Sometimes you need to downgrade, sometimes you need to make some additional configuration changes, but effectively it's swapping out a vulnerable component for a patched component. That's effectively all you need to do to secure your open source libraries. So Then the question was, why are we still using vulnerable dependencies across projects, right? And it's kind of how SQL injection or cross-site scripting, they've been in the OWASP top 10 forever, but they still continue to be there. Why is that? Well, our assessment, and we could be wrong, but our assessment was that it's because remediation is painful. The effort to reward just isn't there. People assume that these are third-party dependencies or libraries that are transitive sometimes in nature, and they may or may not be exploitable. So do I want to break the compatibility of my program? Do I want to break my dependency chains just to try to fix a vulnerability which may or may not affect us? And so at SCANTIST, what we said was, let's try to fix that problem. Let's try to provide not just the vulnerabilities and vulnerable dependencies, but a remediation action plan that was a lot more on point. So that's what we began with. And this is something from even the Node, the NPM community itself. So you see people listing out that they're using a particular package and it has a transitive library and that is vulnerable. They want to fix it, but there is no fix or recommendation at NPM audit. NPM audit, for those of you who've used Node, would know that it looks at vulnerable dependencies and it checks for whether any of your third-party libraries, open source libraries are vulnerable, and it'll suggest remediation. But in this case, it seemed to be missing because of a transitive dependency. So transitive dependency meaning you define library A and library A calls library B, library C, and one of them is vulnerable. How do you fix that? And so that is the problem we set out to solve. When we went to do that, well, first thing first, we needed to know what we had. So we covered about 32 million different open source artifacts, those are libraries and versions from across different languages. And what we effectively did is we stitched them together into a graph. So basically, we recreated the entire transitive dependency network globally when you look at open source packages in-house. So we mapped open source components, and then we said, what do these open source libraries and components depend on in turn? And so on and so forth. So we created a chart of open source libraries, a graph with interconnected nodes and so on, to know how do certain libraries end up in applications. And then we tagged the nodes on that graph that were vulnerable. So you have your public CVE disclosures, that is most common. So the vulnerabilities we tagged on the nodes, and then further on, you can complement this information with a lot of non-CVE vulnerability data. So this is from Jira tickets and SCM issues and security advisories and so on and so forth. And some of it is from our own research. So we mapped out a graph of open source libraries and versions and their dependencies, and then we marked out the nodes that are vulnerable. Once we had that graph up there, what we could do for our customers is we could pick out, okay, if you are using a particular vulnerable trail, what is the closest trail that is not vulnerable? So how do you upgrade your library or version, or even downgrade, which is often the case, to something that is clean to use? And that is what we currently set out to do. And we have managed to do that to a certain degree of success. So what we just now defined is the graph. We call it the dependency graph because it is a graph of dependencies. And we made it at a global level. And then we recreated that graph on the project level, which is your repository level for our end users, as well as on the organization level for the end users by stitching together multiple dependency graph on the repository level. So create another localized global graph for our end users as well. And then we suggest remediation capabilities and action plans that would fix these issues. Now, if all of this sounds very abstract, then I'm going to do something very daredevilish at this point, which is I'm going to try and do a live demo of what I mean exactly. And we'll walk you through how we find and fix these issues. So we are currently running this functionality in beta. We are covering JavaScript, Python, Java, Ruby, and PHP with this support. So if any of you guys want to try, please feel free. We have the link for you guys, but I'll just show it to you. So, so this is our tool. This is what it looks like. And it's a simple web dashboard, your standard security, red, orange, yellows. And I've linked it to a particular GitHub repository in this case. So this is just a dummy repository with a manifest file which defines my third-party libraries and dependencies in this package.json. I'm using npm and Node.js for simplicity's sake. So these are my third-party libraries that I'm using in this project, and I've defined them like this. Now, when I build this project, so I'm gonna just trigger a build by pushing a commit here. So once I trigger a commit change, I'm going to stimulate a build. And since we integrate into the build cycle, so at the end of the build, we're going to trigger a scan and we can view the results. So effectively, when you run that build and you run a scan, you will find that while the defined dependencies here were limited to a handful, in this case, it is less than a dozen. In reality, after the transitive dependencies are involved, you have a much more diverse dependency graph. So the build is now in process. It'll take about a minute to run the scan. And once you get the scan results, you'll see that it's no longer just these 8 or 9 dependencies. It is other dependencies that these libraries also call upon at build time. So at the end of this process, this is where we call our scanner to run analysis on the build. Okay, that should be it. So now we trigger a scan. It's a quick analysis of the dependencies. And that's the first step, right? So we're creating the dependency graph for this project at this point in time, once the build is complete. So if I go here and I view this, this is what the dependency chart for this project looks like. So you have your base layer, and then you're calling a certain set of libraries directly. So these are the handful of libraries that you can see on this level that are defined by the end user. Then from there on, you have transitive dependencies. In this case, the serialized library calls a whole other bunch of libraries, and some of them in turn have other libraries as well. So we are color coding what is vulnerable for the end user. So we've realized that that visibility is important when it comes to remediation. So we provide that level of breakdown into what is the actual dependency structure for your project. And then you can always swipe this out. In case there are thousands of dependencies, you can limit it to just focus on the vulnerable ones. So you can see there's a fair bit of vulnerable components out there that are being introduced into this project. You can get a flat list here, and you can go through them, get an entire list of the 55 odd components that exist. Now, if I go into the exact vulnerability section, which this is also something like you would get at an NPM audit level, for example, and I view a particular CVE, I can get this level of information. So in this case, I get, okay, I'm using Hook as one of my vulnerable libraries, and it is fixed and patched in 4.2.1. So you would assume that the vulnerability remediation process is simple. I update this library to this version. However, Hook is not a direct dependency in this project. It is a transitive dependency of Boom, which is the actual library. And you can see that trail here. So the challenge oftentimes for developers is if they see a disclosure like this, without this information that we have provided, they don't know how do you patch this. Sometimes it's transitive, sometimes it's not. This is especially if you're not running NPM audits or if you're running older builds. And at least NPM has the NPM audit function. When it comes to other languages, this isn't even there. So if you look at Python with the PyP package managers, Java with Maven, and so on. So the remediation in this case is actually to fix the root of Hook, which is the Boom library, to a newer version, which would in turn call a fresher version of Hook that would be patched. So that is kind of the remediation. And so when we create a pull request for this, we are patching the root library, not the actual vulnerable library itself, which is how you want to view your projects and you want to view your dependencies. But again, doing that individually for 32 odd vulnerabilities is a pain. So what we do instead is we find a way to abstract all of the vulnerabilities and vulnerable libraries into a subset of direct libraries and updates that need to be done. And we do this in a compatibility aware manner. So we will try to patch it to something that is as close as possible to the version you're using. And then once you do that, you can just create a simple pull request. So I will select all of this and I'll create a PR. And this triggers the pull request on my source repository. And that should identify and fix all of these issues. Hopefully, we'll see when I create the pull request, and we can run a scan on that. So the idea is to, again, make it painless, right? If it is just a vulnerable dependency, I, as a developer, do not know if it is actually going to cause me any pain, and it's going to possibly cause compatibility issues. We want to make the process painless. And that's effectively what we're doing. So I can go here and I can, so I have this pull request, which is patching the specific components that I just talked about. It's triggering a build, and that build would also be scanned automatically as a part of the CI/CD integration. And hopefully, unless there's a new vulnerability disclosure in the few minutes that we have been talking, this should address most of these issues. So if I go back here, so we, as a part of the integration, we trigger scans on all pull requests as well. So once we get the results for that, we should be able to see the vulnerabilities being resolved. So the idea is, as we said, not just find vulnerable dependencies and flag them, but to also make sure that the fixes are painless. So in this case, you can see the count has gone down from 55 to about 50, because we've probably gotten rid of some redundant dependencies, but from our understanding, all of these should be clean now. So there is no transitive or direct vulnerable dependencies. And that's the kind of functionality we're building upon at SCANTIST, trying to make the developers' life easier. I mean, we love open source. A lot of this is built on open source, but effectively mitigating the risk, I think the community as whole and even developers can use a hand with it. And that's kind of the tools we're trying to build out there. Another level of visibility I talked about is the knowledge graph. Maybe I can just view this one. It's preloaded because it takes a while. And basically here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to chart across different projects what are the common vulnerabilities. So again, it's about visibility. So if I take my projects and I want to view only my JavaScript project, and I only want to view my critical and high vulnerabilities, and I can get rid of the licenses and etc. from here. And I do this, I can now get a chart out there. I don't know how it looks on your screens out there, but effectively you can get a graph with the correlations in terms of the security issues that are shared among multiple projects. So again, this is another level of visibility that we provide to our end users to, again, identify, okay, I have a vulnerability that affects multiple projects. I can probably fix it all at the same time. So as developer tools, that's what we're trying to build, is find a way to make developers' lives easier. Not just find vulnerabilities, but make fixing them painless. And that is kind of the mission here at SCANTIST. That's what we've been doing for about 4 years now. We've been received a lot of support from NRF, NTU on the journey, and we continue to grow. We're co-founded by Professors Liu Yang and Srikantan, and myself. I'm one of the founding team members, and we are always looking for people to join us in tech and non-tech roles. So if any of you like what you see, want to know more, or you want to join us, especially, we are hiring. Please do reach out to me, write an email, rohan@scantist.com. And with that, that's a quick wrap on what I had to share. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sorry I couldn't see any reaction, so I don't know.
Yeah, Rohan, I have a question.
Sure.
Elvin here. Let me ask you something. When you when you do presentations like this, do you get a lot of people walking out on you halfway?
I don't know.
Really? Okay.
It depends on
I'll tell
who
you why. You see,
audience.
I'll tell you why I ask you that, because you're supposed to be delivering to us a presentation about open source, and you're pushing open source very, very, very enthusiastically, and I can see your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But you are using a proprietary presentation software.
It's proprietary in what sense? I mean, it is free to use. It's still free and open source, right?
You see, Microsoft PowerPoint is a proprietary.
Okay. In that regard.
Oh. And frankly speaking, if this were a commercial presentation, I would walk out within the first 30 seconds. You know? But right now, I'm behind the screen, so I can't do that.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
So these are one of the pointers you might want to consider.
I'm sorry, I'm probably not as aggressive in my take on the open source community, I guess. But I mean, it's unfortunately,
and people can see that. And people can see that you're not as aggressive, and therefore they will switch off. You see?
Understand. I'll take that feedback. Maybe I can add that as a pointer to my presentation. Make sure that really embracing open source. But I think our general ideology still holds. I don't think it has to be extremes in terms of either you're fully and 100% open source or you're not. I think there can be a middle ground for it. I prefer to use open source wherever possible. But when I have the luxury of using a commercial software, I will agree that I succumb to it.
Yeah. Any other question?
I was just going to say, Alvin is probably just very detailed. I never even noticed it. Eyesight.
Yeah.
Anyone else has any question?
This is Kit.
Hi,
I'm just wondering, have you gotten any feedback from developers?
Yes. So we've worked.
Let me just add. This is Harish.
Sure. Hi, Harish. Nice to see you again. Yeah.
Maybe Kit can finish first. Then Harish can ask the next.
Sure.
Oh no, that's it.
Yeah, Kit. So we've tried. We've tried working with a few developers, especially some of the government agencies here in Singapore, and they have been appreciative on the developer level. I think we are still working our way towards a full commercial maturity because there's a very high level of expectation in these organizations. But on the community level, though, we've had not a lot of interaction. This is probably our first. We're trying to reach out from a non-commercial engagement standpoint. But I think this is where you get the most honest feedback, which is why we're kind of here. So we love to. Somebody would like to try. As I said, this may not be open source. Even our solution is a commercial solution, but we do have a freemium model. We do want people to use it, and if they have any feedback, happy to incorporate or work on that.
Yeah, Harish.
Yeah.
You were saying?
Yeah. No, I'm just going to suggest, Rohan. I mean, there will be people who there will be a pushback if you are not presenting it using open source tools, especially when your solution is supposed to be for open source products. So, it will happen. But I think what you need to do is to walk the talk. It just as a hint, if you want to, at the start of the thing, it says, this is not my laptop, it's somebody else's laptop. I have to use somebody else's laptop, and so you have.
No, I mean,
an excuse to do something else for that matter, because at the end of the day, if you don't walk the talk, it's a bit hard from a credibility perspective.
Understood.
So it's not open source 100%. I mean, it's actually very difficult. But the more, the merrier, and more people who use it makes it better. And in any case, this is a FOSS Meetup group as well. So it's kind of like doesn't quite gel, but it's a minor issue, but I think it's an important issue to keep in mind.
Sure.
I think
I duly noted
what Alvin said as well.
Yes,
but don't take it too badly. It's okay.
No, not at all. I understand, and I think I guess that's why this community exists, is because of how passionate you guys are about it. And I think there's always different levels to it. I guess I'm not fully there yet, and I'm still trying to explore. I mean, so are we as an organization. So we'll see. I think you're right. It is, if you don't live by your own words, you can't preach. So.
So this is Darryl. So
yeah,
what is your business model? I mean, so how do you charge for such products? Yeah.
So Darryl, we start with a freemium model, which basically should be enough for anybody who's a hobbyist developer. But for commercial developers, organizations, basically we charge on a per developer basis. And then above that is all unlimited, right? So it doesn't matter how many pull requests, how many repositories, that there's no limit on that. It's just based on how many developers are contributing. So like we've integrated with GitHub in this case, so that it gives us a track.
So in terms of the setup, what is required? Is there going to be a client software? Do you need to? I see that you use the browser to render code. So is there a server component, a client server component, or I mean, there's one more cloud component for GitHub or something like that? How does it work?
Sure. So on the cloud server for us, like we have a public service where you can just sign up and use the OAuth on GitHub to sign in and get started, right? That will push out on your builds if you integrate it. So with it, it'll push out a JSON file including just your dependency information, regardless of what language you're using. We basically parse a JSON out and we push it out to our servers, and that's how we scan and push it. We host the results on our own service. That said, for enterprise clients, we allow for a self-hosted solution where they can take the whole thing and host it on a Linux box, for example, and run it even air-gapped if they so desire. Yeah, but it will be a client-server architecture still. So you'll need a server where you set up the entire system, and then any web browser-based client, that's how we interface. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no more further questions, we'd like to thank Mohan from SCANTIST for sharing this with us. And of course, I think we would publish the presentation.
Sure.
Maybe you should clear out any vulnerability first.
Rohan, this is Harish. How does this compare with Black Duck's solutions?
There are
quite a few others who give similar kind of dependencies.
Yes. So that's a great question, Harish. I think, so one is we are focused a little bit more on the, as you said, right, developer-centric remediation. So something that is more actionable than just giving you a raw report. And some of that functionality is here, but other than that, I think one differential that we do is we also look at binary level analysis in a non-meta, non-signature driven way. So we're looking at actual structures of binaries to identify open source use case. So where you're using open source libraries, even though it may not be on a dynamically linked library as cleanly defined in your manifest file, for example. So we try to sniff out those, give you complete transparency into those results. That's one differentiator. The other differentiator we're trying to focus on in a price sensitive market is obviously how do we price ourselves relative to the competition. And then effectively the ability to run the solution in a completely air-gapped on-premise solution, hands-off, that is something I don't think even Black Duck offers at this point. So we feel comfortable, for example, pushing our entire database of vulnerabilities and the graphs to our end users so that they can use it within their secure premise or their networks. So those are some of the priorities, which is why we're working with government agencies where sensitivity is an issue. So that they can implement these solutions.
Okay, so that if there's no more question, then okay, thank you, Mohan. Rohan.
Yeah. Thanks, Zach.
Okay. Okay, next I think we have Houfu, who will talk about the Pi-hole. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Yep. Let me share screen.
Yeah. You can share your screen.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, can I start?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this is my presentation. It's about Pi-hole and how I use it at home. So Pi-hole is basically a ad blocking software that operates like on the network. So it's a DNS kind of thing. So just a short thing about myself. It's not my day job, so go easy on me. I do have a GitHub and a blog and email as well. So my personal interest basically over privacy laws, open source legal applications, natural language processing. So we got that out of the way. Let's go to Pi-hole. So as I've mentioned, Pi-hole is an internet sinkhole. It's a black hole for internet advertisements. It's comparable to things like editing your host file, or basically doing a bind9 DNS server which directs queries from a blacklist to nowhere. So basically what the program does is that if it scans DNS queries and if it matches a blacklist, then it will not serve the actual IP address to the browser. So Pi-hole also has a DNS and a DHCP server, so you can serve internet addresses to your home IP as well. So basically, it needs Linux, but it can run on Docker, and Docker is the setup that I use. Minimum requirements wise is quite lightweight. So 52 megabytes of free space, 512 megabytes of RAM. It's called Pi-hole because originally it's meant to be installed on a Raspberry Pi. So just a quick talk about the benefits of network-wide ad blocking. Basically, you want to block ads so that your websites look quicker on your browser. You get less distractions, no flashy advertisements. And because you don't use video and so on and so forth, your computers also use less CPU, so it's more efficient. In some ways, improve security. The third point, you can also expand your blacklist to include like things like adult content, scam websites, crypto, nonsense, whatever, if that is what you want to do. So yeah, it can work like a filter. The difference between a network-wide blocking and something like your web browser is that it not only protects your web browsing on your computer, but also handphones and smart home devices. So it protects the whole network. And protecting your home network means protecting everyone at home. Because it works on the network level, you don't really need to install another program on other people's computers and headphones. So for the non-techie people in my house, it's transparent to them. They don't think that I destroyed their computer or something like that. Yeah, so just to explain a bit about how this would work. Basically, what you can do is that you can have a Raspberry Pi that's installed with Pi-hole, and then after that, you configure your server to point to that Raspberry Pi as the DNS server. So once that happens, your home computers will direct all DNS queries to your Raspberry Pi with the Pi-hole installed inside it. And the software works automatically to filter out websites that shouldn't be served to your home computers or devices. Yeah, this is example infrastructure, and I think it's recommended as a first Raspberry Pi project, but I didn't buy a Raspberry Pi because I wanted this to be installed on a home server that I haven't used. The problem with a home server is that I wanted the home server to do other things as well. So the solution I've come up with is to install it on Docker with Traffic, which is a reverse proxy. So what happens is that this gray big box here is my home server. It's everything is Docker in here. In terms of ports, I've opened up 53, which is the normal DNS port number. so that all queries from the router or the devices will go to Pi-hole directly. But for web traffic, like 80 to 443, it goes through reverse proxy.
We can't quite see your screen share. Are you sharing anything?
Yeah, I think I am.
Can you try again?
Sure,
Maybe
sorry.
just now got overridden by Rohan. You try one more time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Where is it? I think.
Maybe you're not sharing the correct screen.
I can only see his video. I mean his camera.
Yeah, we can see your face, but not the. That's why I was wondering.
Bottom left, there's a share icon.
Bottom.
Yeah, sorry, bottom left. Yeah. The share icon.
Oops. Now totally can't hear him and see him. It'll take some time to reconnect back. So Pi-hole is like a DNS server. It's like DNS.
I think it disconnected and rejoined again. Yeah, all this thing do happen. So can wait a while for him. So for Pi-hole, from the way it works itself, it basically acts as a DNS server rather than you use Singtel and things like that.
He's back.
Yeah.
Hello.
Maybe you can try sharing a screen again.
Okay, does it share?
Lower left, there's an icon. Do you share your screen?
You can only see his camera still. Strange, huh?
Does it look? I pressed the lower left already.
But then you're supposed to pick the window, no? Browser tab or something. Browser
your
tab.
entire screen, your application window, or
browser tab.
Or tab. Yeah.
I don't know.
Normally sharing the screen is the safest lah.
Okay.
Then you can switch screen.
Anything?
What browser are you using?
I'm not using Chrome. I think it's a Mac thing. Might be a Mac thing as well.
Could be.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, comes.
You got it.
Hey.
Perfect. Okay. Cool.
Okay, now I can see.
What do you do to make it work?
Okay. So yes, now I get the pointer as well.
Okay.
So this is the home server. Okay, it's a box. So the web traffic goes to the reverse proxy called traffic. It's a reverse proxy for Docker containers. So using that, not only I get to use my home server for Pi-hole for port 53, the DNS queries, I'll also get to use my home server for other things like maybe like Plex server or just straight to the web interface. Yeah, so at this point, it's time to demo. I've got the screenshot here, but since we're doing this from home, actually I can show you directly my home admin screen. So I have to share again. So can you see the screen now?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is what the admin screen looks like. Rather than using By9 or Host, you get a very colorful and pretty dashboard where you see your server is working. So you can see from the screen that the queries are going up. Even in this case, you can also see whether it's working by seeing that 15.3% of your queries are blocked. I've used the default block list, so even the default block list really gives you like 84,000 domains to check against. So there's a lot of information you can see on this one. Just from the front itself, you can see how many queries you get by the hour. It's interesting to note, since I'm working from home, that there's a lot of traffic all day, even in the middle of the night. You also get to see the proportion of queries that are answered. So in this pie chart on the right-hand side, you can see the block list in blue. So yeah, 15.3. And as well as the forward destinations, the ISP's DNS server makes up quite a big bit. So some of the data I can see is from the query logs where they give you minute by minute real-time look at what the queries are. So you can see the red ones are the ones that are blocked, while the green ones are queries that are answered. So there's an interface where you can whitelist or blacklist certain domains. Yeah, and so I'm almost to the end of presenting this. Just wanted to show you the performance. You can see the top clients. These are the devices. And you also can see a breakdown of which devices have been blocked. So you can see a big one here is 192.50.130. So it's a really huge device that's being blocked. And yeah, it's almost, if you match it from this side, the top clients and the blocked only, you can see that almost 50% of the queries are blocked, this is really one very naughty device. Yeah, so if you cross-reference it, I found out it's actually my handphone, my Google Pixel 3a. So I have no idea, haven't really investigated what exactly is my handphone trying to do that keeps reaching out to ad servers. But I think, yeah, it's a lot of information. It's very interesting to see what goes on at home in terms of internet traffic. So just to finish up on the presentation, yeah. So we've gone through this one, as well as this one. You can snoop on your network traffic at home. It's okay. You're the boss here, so it's okay to see what your family and yourself are looking at. So yeah, the baddest device is my handphone. So yeah, it's great that I would be able to block it without having to install additional software on my handphone as well. I don't really know how to do it. Yeah, and that's it. Any questions or comments, please? Thank you.
Is the blacklist updated on a daily basis by the Pi-ho?
Yeah, it's community supported. Okay. So they do update it very often. Yeah.
It's a very nice way of doing it, because you are doing a network layer, so anyone can just change your DNS and it will just work, right? So for me, I'm using a blacklist using the host file, which is quite tedious to update manually across all the devices, and you cannot do it on the iPads and tablets, right? So this is another pain. I think Pi-ho is a pretty neat solution to run on run this for your family or even for a classroom and things like that. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it's quite easy to install too. So that was something I really appreciated. Yeah, like I said, I used to do by9, and you have to nano all those configuration files, which is quite daunting for someone who doesn't do it often.
I'm using Opera web browser, and they have a built-in ad blocker. Sometimes I hit these like really fussy web pages. They tell you your ad blocker is on. Can you turn it off? So I mean, it's going to be harder in this case, right?
I think I do get those as well. I think they do detect even when I'm doing it on network level that the ads are not going through. So yeah, I see those messages too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can just turn off the setting on Opera, but if on your side, it's going to be harder, right? Because the individual doesn't have the control over it.
Yeah, that's true. But to be fair, I've not heard any complaint from anyone that they missed something on their web page. So I think no complaints.
Okay.
Yeah. Or somebody wants to turn on ads again or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think going forward itself is going to be challenging for a lot of the advertising companies, right? Like today, I think you hear about Facebook complaining about Apple iOS 14 that's going to block all the cookies and things like that. So the browsers themselves, Chrome, Firefox, and so forth, right? They are also going to block third-party cookies by default. So this was one of the discussion I had with a couple of my friends this week itself. It's going to be a challenge. So yeah, so advertisers and companies may need to monetize some other way rather than using third-party cookies to track all the visitors itself. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's actually it's already 9:30, so I think we don't want to drag on till late, to everybody's rest time. Anybody still have anything to contribute or want to say before we wrap this up? I think we'll talk about the robot next time.
Yeah, actually we have.
This is Harish.
Yep. Harish.
Yeah, no, I put in a couple of links on the chat. This is something which I added to etc host file on my laptop that will block, a significant amount of things. I'm not sure that there's a delay in the audio, but
it's okay. I think we should transcribe all these links to the Meetup group as well as in the YouTube comments. Yep. Okay.
Good idea.
So yeah, we will actually. I think it's really noisy. So these recordings will make it available in our YouTube channel. So we hope to improve the format every time. So the last thing we want to say is that it's more of a personal project, which and Zach is actually helping me. We're building an open source robot, ROS robot. Very slow progress because I'm reading. So it's actually, so I already burned the image. So it's an Ubuntu loaded with the ROS. They call it robot operating system, but it's not really an operating system. It's more like a middleware, a framework. So it's running on a Pi. The next thing I need to do is actually this is the controller board. I actually mapped out the schematics of it, which I can share if some of you are interested.
Application window.
Yeah, where's this one? Okay, can you all see this? So this is actually schematics of it. So at the how do I turn on the pointer?
I think there's no.
He managed to get a pointer.
There's just a crop.
No, that's not the pointer. Okay, so at the center is actually the Pi 4B, and then it's actually at the bottom is connected to a touchscreen, HDMI and a USB. At the top is actually the motor controller unit, okay, which is a ST microcontroller that will drive two of the motors. And then there's a 7-segment LED display to show the battery voltage level, because this is supposed to be autonomous robot. So of course it's all power of a 12-volt battery. And then the peripherals that they can support is actually light. I don't know how to pronounce it. LiDAR. It's actually a laser radar, and then and a camera for machine vision. Okay, so I will stop. Is it stop share? Yeah. So hopefully by the time we have our next meetup, we will have something that we can demo.
So it's MPU.
This is the motor controller unit. Yeah. Okay. I think that pretty much wraps up tonight's meetup. So any last word? Want to go around?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll share the open source updates the next session, because it's getting a bit late. I'll look forward to inviting some other speakers to show you more stuff on the open source thing. Yep. Anything else to add?
Maybe we don't know. Maybe in another month or two's time we can have a bigger group. Maybe if the numbers go down.
If you have any suggestions in terms of speakers, or you want to volunteer to speak, let us know.
Yeah, we wait for COVID to be over lah. Then let's get beer together. Thanks.
You all stay safe. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.